Hi, and thanks for joining me again. We're going to be working through the business unit BSMB 404 Assessment Task 2, and these videos will be broken into approximately 10 to 15-minute chunks so you can work your way through. Now, when you're opening up, you'll notice that the two business units the business unit assessments look very similar. The one that we did previously was Assessment Task 1. You'll see over here. We're going to be working on Assessment Task 2, the one on the right. I'd just like to show you these side by side so you make sure you have the correct one and you're working on the appropriate questions. You'll see straight away there is a bit of a difference between the two in the way their declarations are set out. And if we move down through both of them, you'll see, of course, the assessment purpose here and what this will entail. So you're going to be creating a business plan. You're going to be talking about products, marketing, customers, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, competitors, they're part of your threats, and there are other threats as well. Finances of the business, so you'll be required to complete some financials. Those are documents with spreadsheets and so forth. There'll be advertising and sales information, product and operations or production and operations, staffing requirements, specialist support, risk categories, so the risks that you see your business will be taking on board, a register of the risks, and contingencies on how to manage those risks, how to prevent them or reduce the likelihood of those occurring. When you get a little further down, so we'll just skip forward to the next page, so develop the business plan, part 2. So you'll recognize this section here will start to look a bit like the section that you completed in the other unit. Let's have a little look. I'll just move forward, and it was towards the end of it. Here we go. So here you had to insert a logo and into your business name, business title, etc. And there we go. You'll start to see business purpose and business size and operating history. Now you won't see those exact questions, but you will see some that relate or are very similar later on. So in here you're going to describe the nature of your business. So what are your products and services and the main intention or direction of the business. The number of employees will dictate the size or the expected sales volume. So you'll input just the information there. You might put in that you're, going to make something absurd, like let's say, oh, I forgot the dollar sign. Yeah, let's have some fun with that. And per week. I'll just pause this video for one moment. So clearly that is an exorbitant amount to make per week, especially if you're starting your business from scratch. If you are a brand new business, of course, you'll need to think of it as a growth potential. So you might start with something quite conservative, something based on servicing only a couple of people per week as your business grows. Then your operating history. If you're a new business, that's going to be fairly easy to dictate. Whereas if you're planning on taking over a business, you might have that the business was established in 1965, then it changed hands, became a company, etc., etc. So you might put in other information to that effect. However, if you're having a new business, just state that you haven't undertaken any trading at this stage, that it is not a going concern. The business name, well, that looks a bit familiar to here, okay? And you'll see some information about the costs. Now those costs may not be up to date as things can change from the time that this video was made. If you've registered the business name or you intend to register that name, put the date in here. Locations. So you might have multiple locations, you might have one. Take your pick, see what you're doing, and put in the address and the locations. Okay, coming along to the next part, the business structure. Now, if you read through this, it'll give you a very good idea of what you're going to be basing your business on. The 4 main business structures commonly used in small business in Australia are a sole trader, that's one person operating on their own, a partnership. So this could be more than one person, yeah, two, three, four as a partnership. A trust. So a trust is a legal entity. Oh, just to clarify, a partnership is not a company and definitely is not a trust. So the partnership, as I said, is just individuals taking responsibility for the business themselves. So for example, if I was making a business with you and we were both equal partners and had no documentation stating what the share of responsibility was in the business, we would both be jointly responsible for each of the business's costs, expenses, or in some cases risks. However, if you look closely, you may find that there is something referred to as joint and severally liable. That means together you and I would both be liable to pay for something which we owe, or if it was severally liable, so either could be an availability, would mean that I would have to take all the responsibility for everything if you were no longer available, or you went bankrupt or disappeared, or vice versa. So each person would be potentially responsible for 100% or half of what the obligations of the business were. A trust is a legal entity that has some tax benefits, and that type of legal structure is probably a little bit beyond the scope of me discussing in this video. And the same with a company. Again, it is another legal entity. They provide a layer of protection, essentially. I'll put this layer of protection in for both of them. The trust or the company can own a business. So they can own a business name in the same way an individual person could. And those businesses, when operated by a trust or a company, then what is, they are responsible for, the trust in the company, they are responsible for the business and its expenses. And if something were to happen, where the business were to be litigated and there was, a large payout, then only the money that would really be taken usually, as I understand it, of course, check with a solicitor, but as I understand it, the money could only be taken from the trust or the company and would not necessarily go to the directors of the trust or the company, the director being the people that are in charge of how those two legal entities are operated. They direct what it does. They are not directly responsible for additional financial burdens once the company has reached its limits. But please check all that information with a legal representative. As I said, that is something that is beyond the scope of me teaching to you in this course, and that is something you may wish to clarify. Here we go. Now, an ABN, Australian Business Number. If you have that from your previous one, that will also help. And you'll see I'm changing something down the bottom. So let's have a little look here. See ABN and ACN. You've done those earlier. GST. Oops, excuse me, that went a little bit far. What I might do now, because you can see that there are some elements that are duplicated, I would recommend that you keep this one in the background. And I'll just minimize that. There we go. And we will bring this one all the way up. Boom. There you go. So, as you can see here, on yours it may say CAN, that's just that autocorrect error that you may see appearing from ACN, Australian Company Number, to CAN. So just have a little look through. And you can put in a real company number if you have a registered company, or if you so choose just to put in a bogus one if you're planning on registering one. You can furthermore skip this if you are not intending on having a company. So here, GST, Goods and Services Tax. Okay, as you're probably aware, we have to pay 10% of services in Australia for many goods and services. However, if you are not earning above a particular threshold, I recommend you look at that. It's currently $75,000 that you have to register. That is the gross turnover, not what you earn after you've paid your expenses, but the amount that you take in your total sales. So that would be, let's say, if you're charging $75 per service or per item, then 1,000 services would equal the threshold where you have to register for GST. You may also find that with certain qualifications in health services or primary production that you don't require to register for GST. Now, as a remedial therapist, you would be required to register for GST. However, if you upgrade to a Bachelor of Myotherapy, I believe you can become exempt. Having a look here, domain name. Registering domain names, there's all sorts of places that you can register a domain name. There are many different services and they can be incredibly inexpensive to sometimes quite exorbitant. Just have a look and see about registering something and get an idea of what the cost will be, because you'll need that a little later. So take a look through the details that it requires from you in here and pop in your domain name that you're intending on purchasing. You can also search for a domain name to make sure it hasn't been taken by a prior personal business. Some people do make an entire business from just purchasing great swaths of different domain names, and then you have to buy it from them at a premium. Now, license and permits. So you might want to have a look if there are any licenses or permits. You may not need one for the particular business that you're planning on establishing. However, if there was skin penetration for dry needling or other similar services, any skin penetration, you'd require that to be inspected, and you might require a permit or a license. In addition to that, you'll find there can be licensing requirements for signage, particular on-street signage, and you might need to make a note of that. Now, there is a business called Smart License that can help you determine some of those needs, as well as following this link here. Let's have a little look at one of those right now. Just really quickly, we'll take a peek. When I've gone and taken a look for Smart License, I've noticed that Smart License was not one of the first ones to present itself in an online search. However, you can see here that businessqueensland.gov.au, starting a business and licensing obligations. So you'll see all different sections of information that can relate to what it is that you may need. You'll need to do the research for this. As you can understand, we can't present you with everything. You have to show that you can source information and find what is needed to proceed in business. So that's part of the requirement of the assessment, to show your capacity to do these things. So to comply with the law, your business may need specific registrations, licenses, or permits. You may also find licensing for software, licensing for music if you're planning on playing music in your clinic, and there can be other licenses to do with specific business activities as well, including if you had disposal of particular kinds of waste. So have a little look. You'll notice here Queensland Government Business, and they've got that there. Now you'll find, because you are doing a TAFE course, that we will be honouring things that you find on these websites that are relevant and accurate to the questions which you're answering. So you can quite reliably proceed through these, as they should be up to date and accurate. If you've made notes throughout this presentation, feel free to continue to the next video. That will be video B of Assessment Task 2 for the business unit. If you haven't made the notes, please go back and make them now before continuing.